Hello, we meet once again. Welcome back for another session where I talk things related to a resolute mind. Welcome. Today's topic I find an interesting one. In fact, it may be a bit abstract when I really think about it. Today's topic is titled Setting Standards. Setting standards. Interesting one. Let's begin. So, when I think of standard, what comes to mind? I answer. When I think of standard, I think of some ruler or measure made. If there is a ruler or a measure, it must also mean that there is some form of comparison somewhere along the line. Now, I ask myself, what is being measured? In this case, I relate to the self. The self is being measured. Now I ask, who is doing the measuring? And this is where it gets interesting. When it comes to the self, who is setting the standard? Who? Am I the one setting the standard? Are you the one setting my standard? Who is it that is setting this standard? I poke a little thought here. Let us suppose one standard is already set. Yes, it is. Do you know your standards? It is this question that I'm going to explore in more detail today. Let's get straight to it. When it comes to the self, there is that split category. The inner self and the outer self. The inner half and the outer half. It is this split in the self that can cause a great commotion, causing one unrest and a very wavering mind. Take note. For the inner self, there are internal parameters. I go over this again. For the inner self, there are internal parameters. And for the outer self, it yields external outcomes. So the inner self already contains hidden material or instruction or some law or some ruler to give or produce external outcomes through the outer self. This is a very important concept. I go over this thought once more. What is fed into the inner man becomes manifest in the outer man. That is it. Now, is it always the case that what is internally bred becomes externally visible? This is the question of standard. This is the question of integrity. Does one half reflect the other half such that a whole is made? When one half reveals the other half, not in opposition, but in its exactness, then one also becomes one, if that makes sense. I mean to say that the inner half is actually whole to make that other half whole, just as the first half. I pause for the moment. Now, I feel a bit relieved by saying this is not a mathematics class, but I hope you catch what I am saying. Okay, So the question of integrity deals with wholeness. There is no break or opposition or contradiction in what the outer man is doing when the inner man is thinking. The outer man does what the inner one is thinking. There is congruency in its fullness. It does mean then that standards are already set for each man. Inside man, there is already a bed of instructions, also known as a law in his inner self, that lets him know of certain things. So then, it becomes a challenge to figure out what those standards are. But this is no guessing game. I share with you some of my observations. Point number 1, life's cycle. I trace life cycle as a circle. If you want to figure out where you are going, just look at where you are coming from and you have your answer. When one is born, he may be born into a jubilant life, no worries. Then, on his journey, life carries him through mysterious paths that lay unfamiliar to him. These very paths help him to miss those beginnings when life seems simple. His beginning showed him his ending because he works to regain something that he noticed he once had and has lost. This is life. We fight to regain something we once had as we found value in such. We work our way back to the beginning. We work our way back to innocence. The heart wants what it wants and will fight diligently to regain that sense of peace and balance. Point number 2, witnessing. Who said that life told you that you had to figure out your standard? Who said you have to have everything already figured out? No, my friend, this is not the case. This is just not the case. You may not know which instructions have been fed into you, but just in case, one day, life will somehow reveal the things that were, the things that are, and the things that will always be. We may not know ourselves, but when opposition appears, in much surprise, one may begin to experience the upholding of the law that is within him. This man has to do absolutely nothing of his own. The law inside of him will instruct on all that he is to do, all that he will do, all that he's going to do. It is like a program. He's already programmed for his expressions for each circumstance that he faces and that he is going to face. He is not doing, he is witnessing. There's a difference. What is he witnessing? He is witnessing an invisible force already at play in trying times. Now, not everyone will get this, but this is an important nugget to remember and move on. I move on to another important point. Point number 3, rest. Now, I am going to stress on the topic of rest and the importance thereof. I do not know about you, but I have heard far too many times the saying, rest is for the weak. In my culture, rest is considered a sign of weakness. One may very well be described as lazy if he does not appear to be doing anything. There is a culture of work, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. But I stress an important point here, a very important point. When it comes to the end game, when it comes to the end of this life journey, one must ask himself, Does the work output or external outcomes match the standards that were internally set? Work is important, yes, but it is equally important to do the work that is actually required of you, nothing else. Nothing else is important. Your life rests on the type of work that you do. But I share a secret. Point number 4, work and rest. If one does the work required by law, he rests. I repeat. If one does the work required by law, he works in much repose. For life, the giver of instruction will feed and support and nourish him to make sure that his life's work is completed from beginning to end. One works, but he works in much rest. And then, at the end of it all, he can finally rest or retire when he has completed his life's mission. Anything else is a distraction, I note to self. I drop a silent thought here. If you come from a place of rest, then you are surely going back to your place of repose. Think about it. Point number 5, the big picture. So, the big picture here is that man works through his maze of a lifetime, making use of his internal instructions to outwardly express that what is fed from within. It is this standard of internal instruction by which man lives, and he can find much repose in his line of duty. Life will uphold this man as he works through his life's project from beginning to end. And I rest on this note. Thank you for listening once again, and hope to see you until next time. Adios!